is, if you are a WWE fan, the walk-up music of Drew McIntyre, who is currently the WWE champion. He is with us. Drew, do you still get chills walking down to the ring when your music comes out and you're about to come from the backstage? Not even to mention the fact that you're the champ right now. That has to be pretty cool for a kid who grew up a fan of wrestling in Scotland, doesn't it?
Yeah, every time that music hits, I get fired up. Thank God you played it right now so early in the morning. It's fired me right up. Those bagpipes play, that Scottish war music plays, gets me ready for battle.
What did your parents say when you told them you wanted to be a wrestler? Like, I know, like, that's something that, I don't know, you tell me how popular it was growing up in Scotland to know what was going on with the WWE and how you followed it and what kind of attention it got. But I would imagine that that's not necessarily a common career path for very many kids growing up in Scotland. Yours, obviously, has ended up in an incredibly successful fashion. But when you tell mom and dad, hey, I want to be a wrestler when I grow up, their reaction is what?
Sure, Drew, you're going to be a wrestler. You're going to be in the WWE. Mm-hmm. That's basically everybody's reaction when I told them I wanted to be in the WWE. Growing up in a small country like Scotland of 5 million people, no one had ever done it before. They called me insane, but I worked my butt off, believed in it, worked my butt off even more, and eventually at 21 years old, I was the first ever Scotsman signed to WWE.
So you grew up, I believe, a fan of Bret Hart, if I'm not mistaken. How much wrestling did you watch growing up, and how much access did you have to it as a kid in Scotland?
Yeah, I was a huge Bret Hart fan growing up, and it was pretty big in Scotland and in the UK in general. But I did have to seek out a lot of, if you remember VHS tapes back in the day. I used to have to get on the internet. I had to seek out some VHS tapes. I would get sent to Scotland. I would watch whatever I could get my hands on, just for that big, big dream of making it to WWE one day. I'm currently looking at the title at the other side of the room thinking to myself, every day, I've been a champion for 4 months now. Every day I'm just shocked. I'm like sitting here in my office, WWE champion.
How often when you're out publicly do people come up and challenge you in any kind of way? I don't mean like to an actual wrestling match, but you're a big guy. You're walking around. You're now the WWE champ. Sometimes you talk to boxers, and people love to come up to boxers when they're the heavyweight champions of the world and say things. Do people say a lot of things to you when you're out publicly now that you are obviously such a prominent wrestling figure and the WWE champion?
Yeah, I mean, 6'5", 270 pounds, looking like I just fell out of Game of Thrones or something. I don't exactly blend into the background. So, you know, thankfully, WWE being so big and featured so prominently, I am recognized a lot. Today's day and age, I like to tell everybody, please don't run up to me so quick. Like, run up and stay 6 feet away and we'll have a conversation. But, yeah, you know, these days, pretty recognizable.
How strange.
You don't challenge me any fights, though.
Yeah, you mentioned it, like, and we talked about this on the program because back in April, Vince McMahon and the WWE, when everybody was trying to figure out how do we get sports back up and running, I sat and I watched with all three of my boys because we're all big wrestling fans, WWE Network, pay-per-view subscribers to the over-the-air, to the streaming service, everything else. But we watched 2 days in a row of WrestleMania. It was so important, I thought, for there to be real live-ish entertainment, right? I know it was taped at that time, but it was all set up and it was done so well. How wild has it been for you guys to adjust to not having crowds present and to doing your performances in ways that are totally different than maybe would have existed for most of the history of the WWE?
Yeah, it's been bizarre not having the fans there. You know, we always say that our fans are our number one superstar. Without that live, you know, reaction to feed off of, it was interesting, to say the least. But, you know, WWE, we always innovate and adapt and figure out the situation. The fact we brought the world WrestleMania at the height of the pandemic, every other sport was shut down, was one of the proudest things I've ever done. And when I heard the feedback, we had 13.8 million social media interactions throughout WrestleMania weekend, up 60% from last year. We really took a lot of people's minds off such a difficult time. We'll push through each and every week, figuring out new ways to adjust and reach people at home. You know, generally, we wouldn't look down the camera and break the fourth wall. Like if you're watching a movie, somebody wouldn't stare at the screen and talk to you the whole time. It'd be kind of weird. But these days, without the crowd there, we're able to look down the camera, make that connection with people at home. We've made a lot of progress over the past four months, but things are about to take it to another level. This Friday, I don't know if you've heard, but the Thunderdome's coming.
Tell me about it. SummerSlam is coming, and obviously there are a lot of people still looking for as much entertainment to take them away from the real world as possible. What are you expecting to see at the SummerSlam? And for people out there who may not be familiar with it, what can they have? What can they look forward to?
Well, SummerSlam itself, you can expect Drew McIntyre to beat up Randy Orton and defend my WWE title. But this Friday in particular, on Fox 8 to 10, we're about to start something very, very different. When it comes to the whole no fans being there, that era is over. We're bringing everybody the Thunderdome. We're bringing everybody a spectacle. So let me paint a picture for you. Thunderdome. It's going to feature, state-of-the-art set, video boards, pyrotechnics, lasers, cutting-edge graphics, drone cameras. And with the fact that we've had no fans recently, I've been watching the other sports. They've been trying these video walls of maybe got like 100 fans, 200 fans, 300 fans. That's okay. But at WWE, we like to take it to the next level. We like to take it to the extreme. We're going to have thousands of fans integrated into our show, like via the virtual seats, up to 1,000 fans at a time. To be up the digital boards at one time. We're going to have that atmosphere back. Like, things are going to be crazy. Every wrestler's entrance is going to be like a grand WrestleMania-style entrance. It is going to be so over the top. If you've watching WWE, you know what to expect. It's going to the next level. If you're a lapsed fan, trying to check it back out. And if you've never watched WWE before, this Friday on Fox, check it out, 8 till 10. This Sunday on SummerSlam, our biggest event is WrestleMania. Check it out. It's for the whole family, the youngest kid to the oldest adult. It's not just for guys. 40% of our audience is females, and this is the time to check out WWE this weekend.
Yeah, at WrestleMania 36, you beat Brock Lesnar. What does it feel like and obviously it's a different kind of feel, as you mentioned, in terms of how many people watched. I was one of them. My kids were one of them. But what does it feel like to suddenly realize that you are forever linked to the history of wrestling as a WWE champion? Did you ever think that you would get a title, and what did it feel like in that moment in time to know that you had one?
There was times, honestly, I wasn't too sure if I was going to pull it off. We talked about how I was signed at 21, but I was fired when I was 29. It was on me, completely on me. I forgot it was my dream. I lost perspective, and I really had to look myself in the mirror after I got fired and say, hey, this is on you, buddy. From that day forward, I really worked my butt off, left no stone unturned, told myself, never again will I be able to look in the mirror and know I'm not working as hard as I possibly can. And I earned my way back into WWE. I started in NXT, which is our third brand. I started essentially at the bottom, worked my way to the top, and the fact that I made it to WrestleMania in the main event and faced and defeated Brock Lesnar, one of the greatest combat sport athletes of all time, in 5 minutes and pulled off my lifelong dream. It's absolutely surreal. Like I said earlier, I look at the title and every single day I just feel like so blessed. Like, man, a kid from a small country, WWE champion, the top of the world, it's pretty mental.
We're talking to Drew McIntyre, WWE champion. I'm curious. I like to talk to people who are stand-up comedians or people who are musicians, because you start off literally at the most bottom level possible. And even if you become extremely successful, you talk to a stand-up comedian or you talk to a musician, they can tell you about showing up to play for 2 or 3 people. There's hardly any crowds there. When you look back on your career now, what is the event that you did or the crowd that you did and you're like, man, if people could have come back in time and seen where I came from, because everybody has to kind of start at the bottom rung as far down as you can possibly imagine. How many people are showing up for the earliest wrestling shows that you did, and where were they taking place? Like, if we could go back in time, obviously you got SummerSlam coming up, WrestleManias. These are massive, huge events with millions of people watching. But you wrestled in front of how small of crowds when you began your career?
I mean, I've wrestled in front of 0 people, and I've wrestled in front of a few tables of people who were not interested in wrestling and had their back turned to me and were irritated that I was wrestling in the background because I happened to be entertainment for that evening when I was like 16, 17. And as I mentioned, when I got fired, I had to kind of humble myself and go back to that world. And I went from WWE, 80,000 people at WrestleMania, regularly 20,000 people at our shows, to 50 people again. And I really had to go through that experience again, really had to humble myself, learn a lot of lessons. So, yeah, when it came to wrestling in front of nobody at the Performance Center, even though we had millions of people watching around the world, trust me, I had my training.
Yeah, it is fascinating because I think people tend to we have a podcast where we do a lot of what we call wins and losses, and people love to look at the success. But oftentimes, I would imagine when you experience the success that you are now, and again, we're talking WWE champ Drew McIntyre, at some part of it in the back of your mind, you have to be cognizant of the journey that you've made and how wild it is to have covered so much territory like you have. And I think, again, as a society, we tend to focus almost exclusively on success, but the journey is sometimes more fascinating than the end result.
Yeah, it's the journey. It's not just made me the performer I am today in WWE and the WWE champion I am today, but the man I am today. You know, I'm a boy for a long time, came straight from school, straight to America, never really had a chance to grow up. And when I was out on my own, really had the chance to grow up, become a man, hone my craft. And I'm very proud of the journey where it led me to today, because I wouldn't be able to handle everything that's going on right now, trust me, as champion in a worldwide pandemic, if it wasn't for my journey.
Drew will be watching on Sunday, SummerSlam. I appreciate you getting up early with us and spending this morning discussing it with the Outkick crew, and we look forward to watching on Sunday and Friday as well.
No, thank you for having me on. It's been really cool. And like I say, everybody, check out WWE this weekend. Check out the Thunderdome. It's going to be something that's going to blow your damn minds.
Blow your damn minds, indeed.